You're gonna measure from the inside of the jamb to the inside of the jamb. This one is 24 inches wide. Most interior doorways are 80 inches. This one is 81. That will work. Better to be too big than too small. If you have an opening that's 84 or 96, you're gonna need a custom door size. If your opening was 30, you'd buy a 30 inch. If it was 36, you'd buy a 36 inch. If it was 48, you would buy 2 sets of 24. The first step is to install the track. You want to put the track as close to the front as possible, but keep in mind that the door is going to stick out a little on each side of the track. So if you put the track out too far, your door could be out here. It might look odd because the top of the door is going to go into that hole and pivot. So we want to mount it like that, and the other end is open. This screw holds this bracket in place, and the bracket can slide. If the bracket is covering that hole, just loosen it a little bit and move it out of the way. You need to have access to that hole to screw it in. I've got 1 screw at each end. And if you're doing a longer track, just put in 2 or 3 screws. Don't put in every screw because you may have to move it or adjust it. So just put in enough screws to hold it steady so you can get the door in and test it. Now to loosen this and adjust it, you have a combo screwdriver like this, use the larger head. Now with this in place, I just push this bracket all the way against the jamb because I want to measure the distance from this hole to the edge of our jamb here. And you can see that's 3/4 of an inch. I want to bring it down here and measure 3/4 of an inch from this edge and make a mark. We're just going to put it into the oval cutout right in the center so we can move this if we have to. We have the larger panels on the bottom, so we know that this part is going to go up in this corner. And we know that this part, the spring-loaded part, is going to go up in this corner so it snaps into the track. There. You want to get it down flush. This part that sits on the lower bracket is going to go into this corner. So with those in place, we can mount the door, and here's what I recommend. Screw this thing all the way in. That puts the door in its smallest position. Just drop the door in to this track right here, and then we have to watch this space. We have to move it over just enough so that it clears this, and there's a little bit of trial and error involved in that. We're gonna stick it up into here. Once the door is in there, you're gonna want about 1/4 inch between the side of the door and the side of your jamb. So about 2 inches. So we want the hole that this goes into to be 2 inches from the edge. So I just made a little pencil mark on the track at 2 inches. We'll put the hole right there. And you just want to snug that down. Don't crank it, because this might have to be adjusted. This is just our starting point. With some of these doors, this top pivot is fixed. So you have to put the door up and then drop it down. But this one has a spring on it. So we should be able to just drop the door into place and then lean it in there and just push our spring down and pop it in. So I just dropped the bottom pivot into our bracket. So that's in there. And now let's take a look and see where we are. You see our pivot doesn't even reach. We're about 1/2 inch short. So we're gonna take the door out and we're gonna extend the bottom pivot 1/2 inch. I've gone out like maybe 3/4 of an inch. Now we'll see how that looks. So once again, we've got the bottom pivot into the bracket, and don't worry about where it is in the bracket. We can move that. We're just checking for height right now. And now we look up at our top pivot and see that? That's just about perfect. So what we're gonna do is push this down and then swing it into the hole and let it pop up into that hole. There. Now it's set. Now we'll do the same thing here. We'll push this down and let it pop up into the track. Doesn't want to close. It's working, but it doesn't want to close. Why? Now see, when it comes over, it hits that stop. Everything needs to come out this way, about 1/2 inch. So the track was right there. I just took the screw out, and now we're gonna move the track over there. Another option would be to get rid of this stop. And since we moved the top track, we had to move this over. Okay, so now we put it back in and it fits. But see, down here, we've got about a pinky, and up here, we've got a much bigger gap. So we need to just move the door over. We're gonna loosen this screw and move it over. Now we know we need to move it about 1/8 inch. And this is where it can get tricky. You have two options because you have to move this thing toward the jamb 1/8 inch. And if you can't get in the closet to do it, you have to take the doors off. Generally what I do is make a mark with pencil somewhere, and I get in there and loosen this and then move it 1/8 inch beyond and snug it down. So there, I just loosened it and bumped it over 1/8. Now I'll take a look again. Now everything closes nicely. Got a nice even gap here. And we've got a nice even gap here. This gap is a little big. You could make it smaller, but most people care about the gap on the strike side. So now that we know that that's working, I would double check that screw up there and snug it down. And once you have everything set, put another screw in there. If it's a wood floor, put a screw in here. But if it's tile, you can drill tile. I do it all the time. You drill that out, put in an anchor and hold that down. But this is not always necessary. But you don't want it flopping around like this. So put a second one in there or put this one in there. It's best to have them all secure. But if you can't get that one into the tile or marble or something, it's okay. And sometimes you have to do this on carpet. And these things do not sit well in carpet. So sometimes what I've had to do is get a small piece of plywood or a 1x4 and just cut out a rectangle and put it under there. Now when you push this in, this part becomes flush with the floor. But if you try to screw this into thick padded carpet, this thing is gonna go below the surface of the carpet. And your door will just rub on the carpet. It won't even work. So this will have to be raised up. So sometimes you have to shim this or put a piece of wood under it or something like that. And then lastly, there's the door pull. Just center it on this panel. They can get confusing because when you look at these, you think, you might think, where does this go? Does it go over here? I mean, they don't really work. The door pull really only helps you open the door. So think about it. If it was right here, that wouldn't help you that much. Right here, it helps you open the door. You could use this to close the door. Most people just grab them by the edge. Most of them come with either a wood knob or a white plastic knob and a screw. So you drill through the center there, put your screw in the back and screw on your knob. They don't want this one. Some people buy their own knobs or they bring a handle, whatever.